I want to thank you all for tuning in to Black Video News. I'm your host, Keith Scott. Well, joining us today here on BBN is a unique executive director. Joining us from Houston, the executive director of MOBB, Miss Kimberley R. Alexander. How are you doing, Kimberley?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're doing it by Skype. You're right up on I-10 from us in Houston. And thank you for joining us in Houston. I want to go right into it. Kimberley, you are the new executive director. And I don't want to just say new. Maybe you can tell me because I know this position was appointed to you. And you can tell our viewers, how long have you been the executive director of MOBB? And I want to let them know what that acronym stands for in just a minute. How long have you been a new executive director for MOBB?
So I took the acting role for MOBB United in June, and then moved into the actual role on September the 1st.
Congratulations. No better person for the job. When I did my research on you, a New
Thank
York native from Harlem, right?
you.
From the NYC. Congratulations. Let's go right into the acronym for our viewers. What does MOBB stand for?
So it stands for Moms of Black Boys. And then we add United because we are a coalition. We are united for one cause. We are a single mission organization that is designed and with the idea that we want our sons not just to survive, but also to thrive and to come home every day.
Yeah, well, that's extremely positive, especially in the world that we live today with our young males. I love what you all are doing. But what is so interesting to me is how you shifted gears and now you're the executive director for this organization. But you got 30 years in healthcare. And when I read that, it blew me away. I said, 30 years where? Tell us a little bit about your career in healthcare.
So I started really as a teen, was part of a really pivotal program in my life as a peer educator,
Okay.
talking to other youth my age in all kinds of environments about how important it was to protect ourselves. We were all at risk youth. That's how they classified us. And we had opportunities to kind of tell our unique stories. And even from then, 15, 16 years old, I was in a situation where my life had been impacted by, just what it meant to grow up in some place like Harlem and to deal with the crack epidemic and
Right.
the things that kind of came with that. So, gun violence touched my family really early on. And so, I got involved with an organization called The Way It Is Theater Troupe, which was through the St. Luke's Roosevelt Adolescent Medicine Clinic. And they taught us how to value ourselves in so many ways. But they also trained us to go out into high schools and other locations to really touch the lives of other teens our age. So it was kind of like your peer really coming in and saying, hey, it doesn't have to be this way.
Right. Well, I can imagine that Harlem kind of shaped you into the role that you're playing now. We know Harlem has a history of African Americans, with violence and this. And I don't want to just, put that as a statement on Harlem. But we know, if you know Harlem, Rage Up in Harlem, the old movies with Fred Williamson, and the movies how Harlem was portrayed. Now, Harlem has a really good side to it, but I imagine that did have some significance on how it shaped you for what you're doing today.
Absolutely. I think that you can find some of that history in any inner city that you go to where projects are prevalent and you have drug abuse and such. Harlem is an interesting location. New York City as a whole is an interesting location because I often say it's the most accessible, inaccessible place to live. You
Yeah.
can get point A to point B using mass transportation. And so that's the accessibility of it all. But that, like you said, there were really great points about where I grew up. Being in such a liberal environment, I got to talk to people about a lot of different things. But I also was encapsulated by my church family, by my personal family. I was encapsulated by those who really saw me through the hard exterior that I had. So even being a teen mom and having children young and being in a situation, I was 22 years old with three children. But that did not define my future, but it did prepare me for being able to really reach people where they are. The refined Kimberly that exists right now didn't exist when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 25.
Right.
And so people continue to pour into me. And so it has really become my life's mission to continue to pour into other people in the same way.
Yeah, well, you're doing it with MOBB. Let's go right into it. The acronym. Tell my viewers and listeners what that acronym stands for because it's really unique. And, mothers have been doing it since past time when we talk about MOBB. What does the acronym stand for?
So it's Moms of Black Boys United.
Moms of Black Boys United. Pretty
Exactly.
interesting acronym. Mothers have been doing it for years. Single mothers are still doing it. My mother did it, raised a bunch of us. And here you are, a part of a program that is helping our youth. One of the unique things I like about what you all are doing is, of course, some of the programs, but I want to go right deep in depth to what MOBB is doing. Tell us a little bit about what the role is with the organization and what you guys' mission statement is.
So we want to be a resource and a voice to those in our environment. I think one of the key things when you start a nonprofit organization, many don't survive past 5 years. We are celebrating our seventh year in existence. And we typically don't even really say celebrating because of our mission and purpose, but we say that we're commemorating it.
Right.
Um, our story is unique in that our founder, DePelsha Magruder, started with a Facebook group that she didn't know how to manage, essentially. In her own Facebook ignorance, she created a group that wasn't private, though she thought it initially was. And over a period of time, a few hours, 17,000 moms of Black sons joined the group. 4 months later, or thereabout, we were in a situation where we then had 170,000 women in a group.
Wow.
And it only took 1 or 2 weeks before we were all on telephones and just like really feeling like we needed to do something. And it all started around Alton Sterling and Philando Castile's murder by police.
Okay.
We were all feeling the vicarious grief of those losses. When we look at Black men and boys who are being murdered in our society by those who are supposed to be protecting us, we realized it could be our son. And the Pelsha started this group and really gave us a centralized location to not just cry out, but to initialize and to be motivated to do something. And from there, it just grew exponentially. And so I think there's a lot of unique components to Mob United, but I think the biggest one is that we're mothers. We're mothers who are in so many ways wearing our hearts on our sleeves, but not just taking that outrage and pointing it inwardly and continuing to have this conversation with our sons that says you have to do something different. We're having conversations with our sons and saying to the world, you have to do something different.
Well, it is really unique. I'm glad you talked about that because mothers have not just lost sons, but they've lost grown men. We've seen it happen over a decade, but it's been past time way before that. I'm just talking about the George Floyds and the people, Eric Garner, all of the people that have died for all these crazy situations with police officers. But one of the things I want to dive into is because on your journey, you also had something to do with criminal justice reform in Louisiana. I do know that. And then also legislation in New York when we talk about age legislation. And also you helped pass a bail reform in California. Let's touch on that because this is actually, you know, kind of maybe shaped you into exactly what you're doing. Here we go. We're talking about Harlem, but now we're talking about legislation. We're talking about these reforms. Tell us, our viewers and myself, a little bit more how you hate with those. Hold on, we're gonna come back. Hold on, my producer. We're gonna come right back with we're part one, but we got a part two. We can talk a little bit more about. I want to touch on that because that's very important. I want my viewers to know how you help with these. So we're gonna come back, okay? Is that fine, Kimberly?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna come back for part two right here on Black Video News. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.